that we talk about in contract negotiation, we talk about a BATNA, the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And you've got to have something that you can keep in your back pocket that is a viable threat, because Broadcom want to keep you as a customer.
Welcome to this special episode of the Tech Leaders podcast. A few months ago, we released an episode looking at the ongoing dispute between Tesco and Broadcom following Broadcom's acquisition of VMware. It proved to be one of our more popular episodes, highlighting just how significant this case has become for enterprise leaders. Since then, the case has continued to evolve. Both parties have amended their claims and defences. The court has now set a trial timetable, and there have been a number of important developments that could have much wider implications for enterprise software licensing, commercial governance, and vendor relationships. So we thought it was the right time to jump back in and revisit the case. So joining me once again is our very own in-house specialist, Mr. Barry Pilling. In this update, we'll discuss what's changed since our last conversation, where the case stands today, and what CIOs, boards, and enterprise technology leaders should be paying attention to as it continues to unfold. So backed by popular demand, this is Mr. Barry Pilling. So Barry, it's good to see you. Obviously, I see a lot of you, but it's good to see you on the Tech Leaders podcast again. It's been a couple of months since our last discussion. A lot has happened since then, so we thought it was a good time to bring you back on to bring the listeners up to date. So you're our resident expert on this matter. So at a high level, what's happened since we last recorded, and why are we back talking about this again, Barry?
I mean, this little, so it is the gift that keeps on giving for me. I've got to be honest with you. So when we last spoke, the last filings have been made in February, I think it was, and that was the point at which Dell had effectively entered the fray sort of earlier this year. So on the 21st of May, there was a case management hearing, which was run by a judge called Mr. Justice Trow, I believe. He released an order following that hearing, and the order set a trial window. So there's now a trial window in place for next year, 1st of November 2027 until mid-February 2028. So you've got that 3-month window to have the trial. And also in part of that order, the judge decreed that the Tesco claim and all of the Part 20 claims filed by Computacenter and Dell against various parties, that would all be managed jointly. So it's all being managed as one case, and that trial window will manage all of those cases at one time. And the judge also granted permission for Tesco to re-amend its claim with certain information that they had shared and some updates, and for Broadcom, Dell, and Computacenter to re-amend their defences and their Part 20 claims accordingly. So I think that process is now completed. There's quite a bit of additional detail, which led to reading quite a few more documents. I'm not going to lie, there was another 9 or 10 filings added on for this case.
Oh dear. So you've been busy then?
Very much so.
So what do you think are the biggest developments then in relation to what you just said?
Tesco revealed in its re-amended claim that it's now begun a migration away from VMware. So it expects to complete that by the end of 2027, I think it is.
And that's 40,000 virtual workloads then. That's a big
absolutely.
Project, isn't it?
It's a huge estate, 40,000 VMs. It's certainly, I think, the biggest one I've ever seen. I mean, I'm sure there are bigger ones. But that is a big VMware estate. So much of their re-amended claim revolves around the operation of commercial risks of being forced to complete the exercise under pressure and at significant costs, simultaneously citing the fact that they've had to pay for third-party support. I mean, let's not forget that their contracted support from VMware actually expired at the end of January. So they've had to get third-party support to manage the VMware estate whilst they effect that migration. And they're also talking about they've had to re-architect business applications to make them compatible with the new platform. And they're also having to reevaluate other tools because there's certain tools they were using that are embedded into the organization that aren't compatible with their new platform, like Veeam, for example. Now, we should say they haven't actually named their chosen virtualization platform, the platform they're migrating to, probably for obvious reasons, because they don't want Broadcom to know, but they haven't actually named it in their claim. And also, in addition to that, whilst all this has been going on, they've also had to replace their CA mainframe software that they were using in pretty short order because the subscriptions for the CA products expired in May. So, at this stage, I would say Tesco's probably feeling pretty aggrieved, if I'm completely honest. The message in their claim, or their re-amended claim, is they feel they've been forced into a course of action that they didn't particularly want to take, and they're currently under a great deal of pressure to get it done, and they're obviously really unhappy that Broadcom have put them in that position in the first place.
Yeah, sure. So obviously, it was a big development with the migration and on the news breaking around that. What else does that fundamentally change about the nature of the case, do you think, then, Barry? Does it have a broader impact, do you think, in terms of the outcome of this whole thing?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, obviously, I would have expected Tesco to potentially sit it out on the platform, just get third-party support, stay on the platform and see how the chips fell with the case. Because obviously we've seen in other instances, so for example, the Dutch Ministry of Infrastructure last year, the court in the Netherlands obliged Broadcom to continue providing them with support. So I would have expected Tesco to actually sit tight, but they've obviously decided that they want to take matters into their own hands. They're not prepared to wait and see what happens with the case because it presents them with potentially too much operational risk, as you think, the best part of 2 years to resolve the case and then another 2-year migration to get off VMware completely. That's probably more commercial risk than they're comfortable with.
Yeah, sure. So Broadcom has filed its amended defense, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah.
I just wanted to know, has anything materially changed in its position, or are both sides essentially reinforcing the arguments that they'd made from the beginning? Do you know what I mean? I'm just trying to get to the core of what has changed recently.
Yeah, I mean, in the Broadcom news, there haven't been any massive changes. They're still citing end of availability as the reason they couldn't offer Tesco the support they required. And obviously, we covered the end of availability conversation quite extensively in one of our earlier podcasts on the subject. So Broadcom is saying, well, you couldn't have that support. That support SKU was end of availability. We couldn't offer it to you. Tesco obviously still maintaining that support was not end of availability. And it was simply a change of commercial models from Broadcom, during which process they decided to jack up the prices as well. So that element of the whole case is still there. That hasn't changed at all. And obviously, Broadcom so Tesco is still citing abuse of a dominant market position under competition law. Broadcom are still saying they haven't abused their dominant market position. What they are now using as evidence that they're pointing to the fact that Tesco actually are able to migrate away. They're going to an alternative platform. So that choice is there, so therefore Broadcom can't be guilty of abusing the dominant market position. I mean, is that completely fair? I mean, they're not wrong. There are other options. But there's also, several reasons why VMware's market share is so significant, because it is the best virtualization platform. It has been for some time. And it's probably, I think we talked about this before, it's probably used by sort of something, it's anywhere between 40 and 60% of enterprise businesses. So they do, I think they do have a dominant position in the market. Whether they've abused it or not, I mean, that's for the judge to decide of them.
Yeah. So Tesco are obviously placing even greater emphasis on its Chapter 2 competition argument, you're saying, yeah. Mm-hmm. Has the case become more, in your opinion, do you think it's more about, the market dominance thing than the contract interpretation now? Then is that what you're saying? That they push in that angle more than the nuances in the contract?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. I think just from reading the new filings, and particularly Tesco's amended claim, there is an overwhelming sense that Tesco are really hammering home the point about market dominance. The words, and I'll put this in quotes, the words unlawful behavior have appeared significantly more now than previously when they're describing Broadcom's behavior and actions in this regard. That said, the supermarket does still want injunctive relief. They feel they've been deeply wronged in the interpretation of the contracts. They thought it had in place to secure support pricing for the future. And as I say, they're naturally now, they are claiming they've been forced into a migration that they didn't want to have to do. So I think they're still pushing the breach of contract and inducing Computacenter to breach contract. But I do feel like they really are hammering the market dominance position now as well.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way, doesn't it? So let's quickly talk about the timetable then, Barry. The trial is now scheduled to run from, I'll have to double check this, November 27 through to February 28. Yep. So it's not November 26, November 27
November
to February
28. I think that speaks volumes of how backed up the England and Wales court system is, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I'm glad you included Wales in that, by the way. But yeah,
Well, it is our legal system, I mean, just as an example, I think I put a LinkedIn post out the other day that the Court of Appeals just this week handed down judgment on a Microsoft versus Value licensing case that's been ongoing for 5 years now. So it gives you some kind of clue as to what's going on. But yeah, so I don't think there'll be too much happening now potentially before the trial itself. I mean, obviously, I'm not a legal expert in this regard, but I mean, there's a pre-trial review scheduled for, I think it's spring of next year. I guess the whole process now is going to be around sort of discovery and evidence, because we need to bear in mind that all we've seen so far are the particulars of the claims and the defences in the legal filing. So there's got to be evidence produced to back up those claims, and discovery hasn't taken place yet. So that'll be what's going to happen next. I mean, I'll be honest, I can't see either side backing down, to be quite honest with you. I think Tesco feel that they are out of pocket because of Broadcom's actions, and they've been pushed into doing something they might not otherwise have done, and I can tell you from my own experience of dealing with Broadcom on multiple VMware audits, they do not like to admit when they're wrong about something.
No.
So I can see this going all the way to trial now, but whether anything will happen much between it, I think it'll be mainly case management stuff and evidence and discovery and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I mean, I know a lot of people have viewed this as from Tesco's, in terms of looking at what Tesco are doing here, because they've obviously initiated this lawsuit, that they were basically trying to almost humiliate Broadcom in public, because it's almost like a PR stunt, in order to get them to the table to negotiate. Do you think there's any momentum in that argument? Do you think that's what's going on here? And, because 99% of these things get settled around the table, don't they? They never get decided by a judge, or very rarely anyway. Do you think that's what Tesco want? Is that what Tesco are really gearing up for here?
I thought a while ago, and I know the general chatter in the industry as well has been that we thought it had finished in a settlement. I mean, Tesco must have seen the AT&T versus Broadcom case, which I think was the first major claim against Broadcom in the post-VMware acquisition. That was settled fairly quickly. AT&T filed in July 2024. It was settled in September 2024. The settlement was confidential. So I can't help but wonder if Tesco had one eye on that, thinking, come on, we're a really big customer of theirs. We spend a lot of money. I mean, their previous ELA over the 5 years from 2021 to 2026 was something like £24 million. So it was a big enterprise license agreement. So I think they must have had one eye on that, thinking, we can get them to settle there, we can get them to negotiate this. But it was a really interesting opinion piece as well on the Register not that long ago. And the author of that was saying basically they think that Broadcom's bitten off more than it can chew with Tesco. And I don't know if anybody's so inclined, have a look at the like there's websites like Caseboard, and you can look at the case, you can see the cases that are going through the courts at the moment. Tesco are quite litigious. This isn't the first time they've been to court or they've got into legal battles with organizations over various things. So, and there's a view that maybe Broadcom should have just settled and shouldn't let this go to court, because maybe Tesco might actually have them over a barrel. I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting one. It's certainly an interesting one.
It is. Yeah, I think Broadcom have demonstrated that they're more than happy to air their dirty laundry in public, shall we say, and fight these things.
Yeah.
But I mean, looking at it from their perspective, I think they've obviously purchased VMware with this strategy in mind, and now this is not playing out the way they maybe thought it would. It obviously affects the decision to make this investment, doesn't it?
Yeah, and again, because this is Broadcom 101. This is what they do. I mean, they've always done it. They did it with CA Software. They did it with Symantec, and now they're doing it with VMware. So they buy the company, they squeeze the asset for as much as they can get out of it, and then they don't really care after that. And Hock Tan, the CEO, has said several times publicly that Broadcom only really care about the top 2,000 enterprise VMware customers.
Sure.
Now. And I think when you look at the way they acted in the AT&T case, that tells me that AT&T were one of those top 2,000 enterprise customers, and perhaps Tesco are. And that is the way I look at it, whereas Broadcom have seemed really, really unwilling to actually negotiate over this. I mean, even the offers that came at the last minute, they weren't particularly valuable offers to Tesco. So that I think says more about the way Broadcom views the relative customers than anything.
Yeah. This episode was brought to you by bedigital. bedigital support leadership teams to optimize cost and get more out of technology investments. bedigital and the team have unrivaled expertise with technology license management and data remediation and are therefore perfectly positioned to help prepare organizations for AI technology capability. And on the last point, bedigital have developed a cutting-edge AI readiness assessment, which provides tech leaders with a platform they need to make well-informed decisions about AI adoption strategy. Go to bedigitaluk.com to find out more and get in touch. So what surprised you most then, Barry, about this case in terms of the developments from our last conversation? What's raised your eyebrow about what's happened in the last couple of months?
I think the biggest thing for me, and we've sort of covered this a little bit, is I was really surprised that Tesco took the decision to migrate away.
Yeah, that was a big shock, wasn't it?
I thought they would, I expected them to put the platform under third-party support, sit tight and see what happened. I think maybe they reached a time where they thought, well, Broadcom clearly aren't going to negotiate on this. So let's just migrate away from the platform, and then we'll just keep pushing this through the courts anyway and see if we can get them to cover our costs. I suspect, but yeah, it did surprise me, that they didn't decide to just sit tight on it and see what happened.
Yeah. Do you think the impact of this case now, or it's proliferated in terms of boards and executive teams now thinking more broadly about platform dependency and commercial resilience? Do you know what I mean? And operational risk around what their commercial agreements and things like that. Do you think in terms of the recent developments, do you think the broader implications are probably going to be more prominent in boardrooms across the UK and beyond? Do you think that's...
Yeah, I think it would certainly have executives thinking more about vendor lock-in, because obviously Broadcom's, all of their behavior in the last 3 years has been symptomatic of trying to lock in their customers, keep them to 3 to 5 year agreements. I mean, it's like the 1 year agreement they offered Tesco at the last minute. That is not typical Broadcom behavior. They very rarely offer single year agreements unless you really, really push for them. So try and lock customers to 3 to 5 year agreements, promises of protected pricing. And the interesting thing as well, and again, I think this is symptomatic, one of the things we've seen this year is Broadcom discounts for VMware going through the floor. So last year we were seeing discounts of 40 to 60% off list for customers buying VMware Cloud Foundation. This year, that's come down to between 25 and 30%. So again, I think that is symptomatic of where they feel a bit more secure in the way they're going. So, but coming back to the point, I do think this will have executives thinking more about vendor lock-in and what they can do to combat it. I think with specific regards to VMware, I think, more people will be thinking about migrating away. I think that's been a thing for a while in the SME sector because it's easier for smaller businesses to get away from VMware. It's not necessarily quite as embedded with a smaller footprint.
Have you seen any high profile, sort of rumors of high profile customers migrating away recently as a result of this case, or has that not really unfolded yet?
No, I've not seen that yet. Doesn't mean it's not happening.
Well, it's getting talked about, I'm sure, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, we only really know about the VMware one because it's in the legal filings. So, yeah, I'm sure it's been talked about. I'm sure a lot of enterprise customers will be watching this case closely, potentially with one eye on a renewal. I mean, just an example, I've talked about the discounts coming down. If we've got customers that haven't yet renewed out of an old legacy ELA, then there won't be as many of them now. They're going to be looking at the Tesco experience and thinking, right, what can we do? Can we migrate away? Can we actually shift this quickly? What does our state currently look like? I mean, we've had customers with diversified virtualization estates ourselves. We've seen customers using other virtualization platforms, though the bulk of it will still be VMware. But so other customers will be looking at that, I think. And I mean, with regards to the sort of the rest of enterprise IT, sort of like the non-VMware, I think diversification of suppliers has been much more of a thing in the cloud era. I think
Absolutely.
as public cloud has become much more popular, most organizations running public cloud are now using multi-cloud models, and it's certainly going to stay that way. And I think enterprises are tending to apply that kind of thinking to other software vendors as well and other software suppliers.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So if this case had never happened, do you think executive teams would still be asking the right questions about vendor dependency and commercial resilience eventually anyway? Or has it become the catalyst for a much wider conversation a lot sooner than it organically would have been? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. That's a really good question, actually. I think there would still be that conversation around single vendor enterprise dependency, because there's been lots of chatter around Broadcom and its behavior since the first stories were emerging 2 years ago on the eye-watering price increases that were coming through on renewals. I think this case probably just hastens executive conversation and evaluation of the inherent risks around keeping with one vendor in a particularly important bit of your enterprise.
You did bring it up yourself, but I wanted you to elaborate on what really stood out in terms of Broadcom's 1-year offer, made just 22 days before the end of service, and according to Tesco, still around, was it 200% higher than they believed they were contractually entitled to pay? But how significant was that development? What can you tell us about that offer?
So from what we can ascertain from reading Tesco's claim and Broadcom's defense, the offer was made really at the last minute. It was only something like 3 weeks before Tesco's existing support was due to expire for VMware. So somewhere around like the 9th or 10th of January, the offer was made. And it was a 1-year subscription offer because Broadcom have actually said that we were already aware that Tesco were migrating away. So we didn't see the point. It was that offer was designed to give them a bit of breathing space, I suppose, you might say. And it was the first time, as far as I can ascertain as well, that Broadcom had actually offered VMware products unbundled from CA. So if you remember from our previous conversations, the previous offers had been an agreement. There was a 7-year agreement of VMware and CA software all bundled together in one agreement, which was something like 237% higher pricing than Tesco would have paid. At this time, it's just the first time they'd actually unbundled it. And Tesco's response was, look, it arrived too late for us to evaluate it properly. And also, we didn't really understand it. It wasn't sufficiently clear in what it actually represented to us in terms of value. And also Tesco said it was still 175% higher than they would have paid had Broadcom simply renewed the support that Tesco thought that they were entitled to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We did talk about this in the last conversation, but I just wanted you to talk a little bit about Computacenter's sort of involvement and this sort of reseller role in all of this. So in terms of like, how does Computacenter's involvement change the dynamics of this case? Is this no longer simply a dispute? Is it not really a dispute between Tesco and Broadcom? It's a dispute between Tesco and Computacenter alongside Broadcom. Do you know what I mean? Or is it something that, or Computacenter really on the periphery because they don't really, how much do they matter in this whole thing?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. So Tesco originally cited Computacenter as a co-defendant with Broadcom.
Yeah. Which I think you did say in the last conversation. Yeah,
absolutely. So we need to bear in mind that the way the channel works and the way the contracts all daisy chain together between customer and vendor. So obviously, in between Tesco and Broadcom, there was Computacenter as the reseller, and there was Dell as the distributor, and then there was Broadcom. So there's this chain of 4 organizations with contracts all the way down the line. Now, Computacenter and Tesco had a contract which basically guaranteed the renewal provisions, the renewal pricing for a further 4 years. And that's what Tesco was citing. What has become apparent is that contract didn't exist further down the chain between a Computacenter and Dell and Broadcom. There was no specific contract that specifically referred to it. That said, Dell have, in their Part 20 claim against Broadcom, they have said, well, actually, in the quotes that we had, that you were happy to sign off and all of this pricing was stated for the additional 4 years, and that's actually guaranteed, or that's contractually part of the distributor agreement, the ADPA, I think it's called, that Dell was a part of at the time with Broadcom, with VMware as they were at the time, sorry. And so Dell have said, actually, you were contractually obliged to carry this on, and Broadcom like, no, there's no contract that we signed that said we have to provide that. So it is really important, and that's a fundamental part of the case, because Tesco have sued Computacenter for breach of contract, Broadcom for breach of contract, but they're also, part of the claim is also they are claiming that Broadcom induced Computacenter to breach his contract with Tesco, which is obviously also quite an important legal principle as well. So, but yeah, I mean, it's the chain and the channel is absolutely massive in this case.
Yeah, of course. I think it was just important for the listeners to understand Computercenter's role in this, because they don't seem to get mentioned as much as the, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
As the other two parties.
Yeah.
So, Barry, is there anything else about the case that we haven't covered that you think is worth mentioning?
No, that's it. I think that covers most of it.
Just in terms of closing takeaways, can you just review the lead up to November 2027 in terms of any key milestones or anything that's going to get announced between now and the scheduled start date of the case in November 2027? Is there anything between now and then that we need to be aware of?
I don't think so. I think there's a pre-trial review hearing scheduled for next year. And I think there's a lot of case management stuff that will happen around witness lists and disclosure evidence, bringing in experts. I think each side of the case has been granted permission to bring in an expert on competition law to actually talk about their side of the case as well. So obviously there'll be exchanging of witness lists and all that sort of stuff as well. So it's mainly going to be, from what I can say, it's mainly going to be legal work that's taken on over the next year or so in the run-up to the case. So I don't think there'll be, I could be wrong, I don't think there'll be any more filings. I think the case is there. Tesco have made their case. Broadcom have defended it. So yeah, it's now just providing all the evidence and witnesses to underpin it,
Yeah, it's an evolving picture, isn't it? So who knows what's around the corner, I suppose. So let's finish up on this one then, Barry, okay? If there's one thing CIOs and boards should take away from this case up to this point in terms of, their own estate, vendor locking, general software asset management, what would it be? What would you say is the sort of the takeaways from the case so far in terms of advice for companies right now?
And it's easy to say this, but the most important thing for me is start your planning early when you've got a big renewal like this. That said, I mean, I think Tesco first tried to invoke their renewal articles in October 2024, so 15 months before they were scheduled to renew. But yeah, I mean, start early, know what your estate looks like, know what the negotiation is going to look like with Broadcom, and also have an alternative. That we talk about in contract negotiation, we talk about a BATNA, the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And you've got to have something that you can keep in your back pocket that is a viable threat, because Broadcom want to keep you as a customer. But if you aren't willing to pay the prices that they're going to quote, what are you going to do about it? Are you just going to sit there and take it, or are you going to come up with another alternative plan? So that's really important.
Absolutely. Great advice. Fantastic. And one other bit of advice as well for the listeners. If you have got any issues like what Barry's pointed out, give bedigital a call and you can talk to the man himself along with our brilliant, amazing team of SAM experts, and we can help you out with whatever challenge you've got. Thank you so much for coming on, Barry. It's been a brilliant update. Thanks for coming back on the Tech Leaders podcast. Let's see how things unfold over the next 18 months, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me back, Gareth.
Great to have Barry on once again. As he explained, this case continues to be one of the most significant developments in enterprise IT at the moment. And since the last conversation, clearly, as Barry talked about, Tesco has strengthened its claim. Broadcom has reinforced its defense too, and a trial timetable has been set. And perhaps most significantly, Tesco has committed to migrating around 40,000 virtual workloads away from VMware, which is incredible. So, but together, these developments have increasingly shifted the case from a contractual dispute to one with much broader implications for enterprise software, broadly speaking. The issues at stake extend far beyond VMware now. They touch on things like platform dependency, competition, commercial governance, and how organizations manage strategic technology risk, I suppose. The trial is now scheduled for late 2027, as we said, so there's still a long way to go, but we'll continue to follow the case closely and bring you further updates as they develop. Thank you so much for listening to this very special episode of the Tech Leaders podcast. If you found it valuable, please subscribe, share it with a colleague. We really appreciate it. And hopefully we will see you on the next one. This episode was brought to you by bedigital. Bedigital support leadership teams to optimize cost and get more out of technology investments. Bedigital and the team have unrivaled expertise with technology license management and data remediation, and are therefore perfectly positioned to help prepare organizations for AI technology capability. And on the last point, bedigital have developed a cutting-edge AI readiness assessment, which provides tech leaders with a platform they need to make well-informed decisions about AI adoption strategy. Go to bedigital UK to find out more and get in touch.